with a bit of a story. This happened a couple of years ago at Watkins Glen. I was out on track. I think it was in the black run group, although I'm not 100% sure of that. But I came around turn 10 and caught out of the corner of my eye a black flag, and I also saw a black flag at 11, and so I pulled into the pits. Promptly followed by two cars that went down the front straight. And at first I thought maybe I'd missed something or imagined something, but in fact, both of those cars had missed flags at 10 and 11 because I think the one at 10 had just come out when I caught it, but regardless, it was clearly there for them. So, you know, it sort of begs the question of how or why can someone miss, you know, two flags in a row. A different story. I live near Interstate 78, and there's a big hill just west of us here where trucks like to park overnight, and there, going back a couple of years, there were a rash of accidents where drivers drove right into the back of those trucks, even when it was daylight. Once at night, once in daylight, kind of within a very short period of time. So again, the question is, it wasn't that dark. It wasn't, the weather was just fine. Why would someone, you know, drive right into a truck that's parked well and truly off the road? So it kind of begs the question of, you know, are there things going on with how we see that will allow us to do things better, you know, both on the road and on the track? So that's the genesis, you know, for tonight, and hence the title, How to See Better on Road and Track. Okay. So the normal disclaimer that you've seen when I do trackside classrooms, that if you learn something here and apply it on the track and screw up, it's your fault, not mine or NNJR's. So here's what I propose we talk about tonight. And by the way, if you have a question, just put it in the chat window, and Matt's monitoring that. Thank you, Matt. And will let me know. Or Matt or others, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. And if it's something I'm going to cover later, I'll mention that. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer it. But here's what we're going to talk about. Where to look, a little bit about how we see, actually how our brain and eyes work together, some exercises to improve how we process what we see, reference points, and we'll talk more about that when we get there, car adjustments, which mainly relates to mirrors, but a couple other things, and then when to look at mirrors and flag stations and so on. And then we'll wrap up at the end. All right, so yeah, where to look? Well, the classic advice is always look far ahead and look where you want to go. Now, how far ahead? You know, the driving schools for, you know, for new drivers say 3 seconds or 4 seconds, or now some of them may say 5 seconds. Skip Barber in their racing schools and driving schools says 20 seconds. And I don't think I've ever been on a track where I can see 20 seconds ahead. But the point is, as far as you can, as you can see, you can't look far enough ahead, in other words. Oh my goodness. So I'm having trouble with the slides here. I apologize. Where do we focus? Most of you have heard this before. If we're approaching a brake zone, we want to look at the end of braking and pick up the beginning of braking point in our peripheral vision. If we're approaching the corner, we want to look at the turn-in point and pick up the end of braking out of our, the end of the brake zone rather, out of our peripheral vision, and so on. And use reference points. Now, we typically use cones on the track, but obviously fixed items are better, and I'll talk more about reference points in a few minutes. The look where you want to go, there could not be a better example of that than this picture of Jim Clark at Indianapolis. Thank you, Steve. You know, he's sliding sideways, as you can see, but he's looking down the track. And I think we all know that the car tends to go where we look, because if we're looking where we want to go, kind of our brain and our hands, you know, have a tendency to work to get us there. And especially true in emergency situations, but true virtually in all situations. We want the head pointed, the eyes pointed exactly where we want the car to go, regardless of the car attitude. Now, what does it mean to look? So let's go into a little more detail. First is focus, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this from a few different directions, but that's really our central vision and where the brain and eyes focus for a period of time. Call it a second, maybe more, but it means just what it sounds like, focus. Peripheral vision, we all know what that is. A glance means we apply that central vision, but it's a quick look, half a second or less. And the mind's eye, the mental picture is, you know, we have a mental view of what's going on. And glances in particular relate to, some of you may have heard the term scanning when it comes to how we look around. Well, scanning and glancing kind of go together. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So here's an example, you know, of a typical 90-degree corner. We're approaching the turn-in point, still in the braking zone. So where should we be looking? Well, that small purple focus in the middle is where we want to be focused. We're right on the apex, so we're not quite to the end of braking. We're approaching turn-in. We want to be focused on the apex. We're going to pick up the turn-in point out of our peripheral vision. But it doesn't hurt to give a glance down the track at the track out and make sure that somebody didn't kick a cone into the middle of the track, or, you know, a bunch of dirt or antifreeze or whatever else. So a glance ahead, if you will, to make sure we know what's coming up. But the focus is definitely on the in this example, on the apex. And so let's see if I can get this to work. All right, why am I not? All right, I wanted to, oh, here we go. So I'm going to ask all of you to chime in. If we're approaching the apex, where do we want our eyes focused? So I'm going to launch a poll that you can pick where you want that focus, that purple focus that you saw on the previous slide. Where do you want your eyes and brain focused if we're approaching the apex? Track out, wide open throttle, down the straight, mirrors, or the nearby flag station. So I'll pause for just a bit and we'll see what you think.
Our Facebook joiners obviously won't be able to participate.
Yeah, good point. Okay. All right. All right. So we have. I don't know, Matt. Can you see the results or not? Okay. So the results of the poll.
No, we cannot see the results.
Okay. I don't know whether they're going to show up or not, but 10 folks say track out. One person says wide open throttle. 3 people say down the straight. I'm going to end the poll. Well, I'm going to share the results so you can see it. The actual correct answer here, if you will, is down the straight. And some of you will yell at me because you've probably heard me say track out is the right answer here in earlier discussions. But the down the straight turns out to be the better answer. Track out is not a bad answer, but down the straight gets our eyes even further up and avoids sort of a connect the dots and if you will, a tendency to maybe drive off the track if we're touch wide or something. So if we get the focus down the straight a bit, it's even better than focusing on track out. So a bit of a trick question, I suppose, but an important way to think about how we should be looking on the track. Okay, if there's any questions, jump in. But
if you click on share results, we might be able to see it.
Oh, it didn't share it? It said it was. Okay, let me go back.
Yeah, I saw the results.
It showed up on my screen.
Yeah, they showed up on mine as well.
I saw it, yeah.
All right, so
Matt, is it because you're in administrator mode or something like that? Because you're watching something else?
Maybe.
Yeah, that's strange because I did see it.
Okay, good. All right, well, it told me it was sharing it, so I was hoping you saw it. Okay, so next I'm going to go into a little more detail in terms of how we actually see, how the brain and eyes work together. And some of you may have seen me use this slide before or seen it in Ross Bentley's material, but this is a really important slide because it turns out that our focus area, where our eyes and brain really zoom in, if you will, is that little red focus circle in the middle of this diagram. And that is, if you were to hold your fist straight out in front of you with your arm straight out in front of you, that focus area is about the size of your fist. And it's not very big. Yes, there's the green circle here where we can see a lot of detail that's a little bit bigger. There's a bigger circle of purple here that's color where we can perceive more of this going on. And we have our peripheral vision. But the area that our brain really processes, if you will, and really understands is quite small. And that's one of the reasons why we want to really look where we're going. If we go back to my story at the beginning about drivers on the highway on an open, clear, 3-lane interstate driving into a truck parked on the shoulder of the highway, why would they do that? Well, it's because their focus area was on the truck, not on the open lane straight in front of them. There's numerous examples of people going off a country road into an open field and hitting the one tree that was in a 40-acre field. Well, why did they hit the tree? Because they looked at it. And our brain's focus area is pretty small. So that has implications, obviously, in terms of how we see. And it's important to think about that as you reinforce in your mind to look where you want to go, because this is what your brain is focused on and telling the rest of your body, if you will, to pay attention to. Now, of course, there is peripheral vision, which is just as important, I suppose, or almost as important, because we use it to pick up reference points that are close. It's important for mirrors and cars around us. It's also part of depth perception. And I'll say more about that in a minute, but one of the key things that most of us aren't aware of is that depth perception is much better at picking up motion than it is anything else. So stationary objects in our peripheral vision really don't register, but motion does register. And I suspect it has something to do with saber-toothed tigers, but regardless, it's a big part of kind of what we perceive in the bigger picture. Now, just for one tangent, for 1 second, what happens if we're stressed or feel pressure? All of this vision, this broad vision, if you will, gets lost, and we're in tunnel vision. We may not even realize exactly what we're focused on. And we certainly lose our peripheral vision first. So we lose awareness of what's going on around. So if you're going on the track when you're stressed or tense, bad idea. So relax before you go out, release tension, shrug the shoulders, make sure that, your brain, can focus on what it's seeing. Now, here's some exercises that you can use to actually improve how your eyes and brain work together. The first one here is sort of a combination of zooming in and zooming out. So you focus your eyes across the room or better out the window, and then without moving, just note what's going on around that as far as possible, left and right, up and down. And then laser focus, zoom in like a camera lens, a telephoto lens on that object for 20 seconds or something like that. And then after that 20 seconds, zoom back out and pick up everything again in the edges and repeat that. And so you're training your brain and your eyes to kind of zoom in and zoom out and note really what's going on around. And a second one, which works on a different set of skills, really kind of works on tracking and so on, is Ross Bentley calls it a lazy eight. If you can imagine a figure eight on its side in front of you, and you just stand with your arm in front and you trace that figure eight in the air, but you follow it with your eyes without moving your head. A little harder to do than it is to explain, but if you practice it for a minute, you'll get it. And again, you're trying to get the eyes to follow that smoothly and be able to process it without interruption. And then the last one, in terms of peripheral vision, we've all probably done the old peripheral vision test where you put your arms out to the side and then you slowly bring them forward until you can see them while keeping your head and eyes straight ahead. Well, that turns out to be good exercise as well. Focus on how soon can you see them and do that a few times. But here's the modification. Do that while you wiggle your thumbs or your fingers, and you'll see that what you'll observe, if you're like most people, is that you will actually see your hands or arms sooner than if you held fingers and thumbs stationary. And it goes back to the earlier comment that our peripheral vision is designed to detect motion. So there's some techniques that, you know, anyone who's interested can apply, and good brain exercise, good eye exercise, and easy enough to do. If there's any questions, I'll pause for a second before I change topics. If not, I'm going to charge ahead. Okay, reference points. The basic idea is you can't have too many reference points. In other words, the more the better. So the basics, everybody on this call, I think, knows these. Beginning of braking, turn in, apex, track out, are basic, you know, cones and track markers. But there's a lot of additions to that, you know, elevation changes, you know, concrete patches, anything else unique to the track should be an additional reference point. You know, concrete patches, while they may not be great for other reasons, are terrific reference points because, you know, turn 1 at Mid-Ohio used to have a concrete patch that if you put the left front tire over it, you were dead on the line, pointed directly at the apex. It was great. So your brain automatically knew if the tire was over that reference point, everything was cool. So those kinds of additions are great. Non-obvious additions, which many of you have heard me and others talk about, end of braking, throttle application point, you know, which sometimes is shortly after end of braking and sometimes a little later, and then wide open throttle. You know, where do you put your foot on the floor? Those are reference points, meaning these are actions you're taking in the car, but, you know, where are you on the track when these happen? You know, what tire mark, you know, what, you know, where on the apex curbing or whatever the reference happens to be. Good additions or you know, references that you really want to have if you're an advanced driver. And the way to get better, you know, more reference points give you a more complete mental picture of the track. And I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. So why do we want more reference points? It's all about consistency, being able to repeat the line. This is a classic case. If you hit the marks, like that concrete patch at Mid-Ohio, you know you're on the line. And also, maybe more important, at least as important, especially for advanced drivers, if it doesn't look the same, it isn't the same. So if you come into a corner and the track surface all of a sudden somehow doesn't look like it did before, then something's wrong, right? Maybe it's antifreeze, maybe it's oil, maybe who knows, but you know, maybe there was a sprinkle that you weren't aware of. So, you know, if we know what the track is supposed to look like, then, you know, we can repeat, and we can also know when we can't repeat. And the only way to make this happen for most of us is to write down reference points on a track map, usually. And from that, create a mental picture, which we then use for visualization. Ross Bentley calls it mental imagery. I'm sure he'll talk a lot about that when we hear him in 2 weeks. But we want that mental picture that we can sit in, you know, in the car, in the pits or the paddock rather, or at home in our easy chair or in the car, and mentally drive a lap. And we know exactly where we are because we know which reference points are the ones that we're, you know, at any given point in time. Now here's an example of using reference points, and this also goes back to that mental way of seeing that we talked about at the beginning. So if we think about how do we look around a blind corner, how do we get around, the downhill left turn 6 at Watkins Glen? We can't see the apex when we turn in for that corner. So how do we know where to focus? Well, we have a mental image of where that apex is, and that helps us know when and how to turn in. And the more visualization we do of picturing that in our mind, the better off we're going to be. The more reference points we have for that corner. In the example of turn 6, there's sealer patches and other things, but it's a tough corner for reference points because there's not a huge number of them. We're in the middle of a sea of asphalt, but the better we can get at picturing what the line is like and what the reference points are like, the better off we're going to be in that corner. So hold on. All right, any questions there before I move on to the next topic? Okay. All right. Well, I entitled this car adjustments. I could have just almost titled it mirrors, but but there is one important caveat, and that is we have to start in the correct seating position. So everybody on this call, I think, knows how we're supposed to be seated. I'm not going to go into that. I do want to mention that from a vision perspective, there is a trade-off, and that is that if we're, if you're quite tall, you may not have much of a trade-off. You may have very little adjustment in terms of seat height or whatever. But if you're not quite so tall and you have the option of raising the seat or lowering it, you have a trade-off. Higher generally helps vision, lower generally helps your seat of the pants. So it's a minor trade-off, but just be aware. And so you might, well, like I do, use a higher seat adjustment on the street and a lower one on the track. And because on the street, the kinesthetics aren't so important. But the main topic here is mirrors. And if you don't take anything else away from what I talk about tonight, please take away this slide and the one that follows. Because most people do not have mirrors adjusted properly on the track or on the street. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope everyone on this call has their mirrors adjusted properly, but I'd be willing to bet that many of you do not. So the rear view mirror, no magic here, adjust it so you can see as much as possible straight behind the car. That's probably okay. But let's talk about the driver's side mirror. We adjust it by resting our head against the driver's window and then moving the mirror out. And so you can barely see the left rear fender. And I mean, just barely see it with your head all the way up against the glass. And so when you sit back up, you're going to see nothing in the left mirror when you're stationary adjusting this in your driveway or wherever you do it. When we do the right side, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to lean our head underneath the rear view mirror, adjust the right mirror, and so we can barely see the right rear fender. So, and again, when we sit straight up, the mirrors are going to show nothing. But what's going to happen, as you can see in the diagram on the right, and even better in this diagram, this is how most people have their mirrors adjusted. They adjust the left and right mirror so they can see a good bit of their car and leave themselves a blind spot. The gray area in this diagram being the blind spot, obviously, and it's big enough that a car can get hidden in that blind spot. If we adjust the mirrors as I just described, now the blind spot is very small and generally non-existent. I've helped dozens, if not more, people adjust mirrors this way in a whole variety of cars. And only once were we not able to get the blind spot completely eliminated. And that was a case where the mirror simply wouldn't go out far enough. But I'd be willing to bet that any Porsche and any car that anybody's going to take on the track can be adjusted so that there is no blind spot. What that means is if you give a pass signal and expect the car to pass you on the right, but you don't see them and you wonder where they are, if you've ever had that happen, that's not going to happen because they're going to be in your right side mirror until they're even. And the Hans adjusted as tight as you have it adjusted, you can see out the passenger window. And the right mirror is going to show you the car, wherever the car is. So no blind spot. And this is one of those things that I didn't learn in myself until literally, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And it's one of those things I said, why did I not know this, 25 years ago or whenever? It's so basic and so helpful both on the track and on the street. And so I can't emphasize enough how important these adjustments are. So questions on that before I switch gears a bit? Okay. All right. So last topic is when to look. And so we're going to talk about flag stations and mirrors. So let's use as an example the flag station at turn 1 at Watkins Glen. Everybody knows, I assume, that there's a flagger at, here at basically at the turn-in point of turn 1, and at the end of the braking zone where this screenshots from. Obviously anybody can see the flagger and certainly should see the flagger. But how about, before the braking zone? We can still see the flagger. And if our mental image of this corner is, the flagger with no flag, if that flagger all of a sudden is displaying a flag, we sure as heck ought to see it at this point. But how about sooner? We can still see it from here. This is one of those glances. Just give it a glance. If the mental picture matches, then cool. But gee, how about from the start-finish line or even before? Well, the road does drop off, but if that flagger is waving a flag, either here or very shortly after this point on the track, we ought to be able to see that flagger.
The one thing I'll also say, Bill, about that is it's right in the front of the windshield.
It's
not often our peripheral. It's not, high or low. It's right in front of us.
Excellent point. Absolutely. This one's easy. We just have to train ourselves to glance at that flag station as soon as possible. And we can't quite see it coming onto the front straight out of turn 11 just because the track falls off. But it's not very far after that we should be able to see that flagger because, as Matt just said, that flagger is straight in front of us. Now here's a different example that's not straight in front of us. Here's the flagger between turns 1 and 2. And obviously as we're exiting 1 in this screenshot, the flagger is off to our right. And so we certainly need to be glancing over there and be aware if that flagger is doing anything. But this is harder, but at the apex, give or take, of turn 1, that flagger is in our field of view. But now they're in our peripheral vision, not straight ahead of us. So now we have to give a glance over there. Now, if your peripheral vision is really good and that flagger is waving a flag, you should be able to pick it up even without a glance. But you're better off giving a glance there and taking advantage of your mental image of that flagger, so that you're aware as soon as possible that something's going on. We hope not, but in case it is. Final example, the flag station at the entrance to the bus stop. Obviously, approaching the braking zone, it's pretty easy to see, right? I mean, we're approaching this at high speed, but that flagger is right on the top of the Armco. So we certainly better have a clear vision of him or her from this perspective. But how about as we enter the back straight? Now, to Matt's point, that flagger is dead ahead of us, straight in front of us. We better be giving a glance down there to see if anything's going on. I can't tell you how many times I've had people, behind me, trying to pass each other or trying to pass me when the checker has been waving for a while. And okay, yes, you can pass before you get to the checker, but if you're aware that there's a checker up there, you may or may not want to do that. So, in my opinion, there's no excuse for not seeing the flag from this perspective. If you want to challenge yourself, think about as you're exiting the S's, can we see that flagger? Well, yes, we can. Further away, now not straight in front of us, but the flagger is visible actually, because as everybody knows, the back street at Watkins Glen goes uphill. So that flagger is uphill from us. And, we can, if we train ourselves, glance over and look at that flag station. So something to check out the next time you're at Watkins Glen. So obviously, flag stations are important. I'm emphasizing it here because it's so important for everybody's safety. And I'm also emphasizing it because, there's really no excuse to miss any flag. And, my story at the beginning about drivers missing at least 2 black flags in a row, there is no excuse. If I'm the chief in the pits, when you come in and say you missed it, I don't care what you say. I haven't heard an excuse that makes any sense, other than I wasn't paying attention. So if you're an inexperienced driver, maybe you're not scanning enough. You're not glancing at the flag stations, or maybe your mental picture of the track isn't complete enough, and therefore, your normal vision view, if you will, isn't encompassing those flag stations. So I suppose with an inexperienced driver, there are some excuses, but with an experienced driver, why would an experienced driver miss a flag? And my example at the beginning, those were experienced drivers. Well, tunnel vision. People get busy chasing a car or chasing a lap time and forget to focus on the basics. And experienced drivers, many experienced drivers, their mental picture is not complete. They don't have all the reference points and all the broad, if you will, picture that includes flag stations. And sometimes, and I've been guilty of this too, you get in a rut. You go out and you drive and you have a good time, and you're just sort of not paying attention to the basics. In other words, we get lazy. So none of these are good excuses, of course, but but they're things to be aware of. And as important as flags are, obviously, we need to pay as much attention as possible. Were there questions on flags before I went to the next one? I saw there were some comments in there.
I would just make a comment, Bill, that another tool that drivers can think about using is develop rhythm. If you develop rhythm, you'll better put inside that rhythm of an opportunity to look. You're approaching a corner, hit the brakes, downshift, turn the car, look for the flag, track out, unwind the wheel. If you develop a rhythm, it makes it easier to remind yourself to look for the flags, to look for the what's going on track.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's a good, rhythm is a good word, because I think most of us have much experience on the track can relate to that. And you're right, the flags need to be an important part of that rhythm. So I'm going to come back to mirrors now. And here's another poll. So let's see here. I got to, okay, do that.
Oh,
I need to,
yeah.
I need to get
That ain't working, Bill.
No, it's working. Hold on. Okay. So so the question here is, when should you look in your mirrors? And this one, you can choose as many answers as you like. So entering a corner, middle of the corner, exiting a corner, middle of a straightaway, entering a braking zone. So yeah, let me know what you think the times are that you should be looking in your mirrors on the track. And my earlier poll might have been a bit of a trick question. No trick questions here. So, all right. All right. So, all right, looks like we've got most people in. So let me end the poll and share the results. So everybody can see that, I hope. And so when should you look in your mirrors? Well, the most important place to look in your mirror, in my opinion, shared by at least a few others, is the last choice here, entering a braking zone. And the second most important part would be the middle of the straightaway, where people, which people chose as the most common one here. And third most important would be exiting a corner. Now, why is that? Let's think about that a little bit. If we're entering a braking zone, we have the whole straightaway behind us, to fill up our mirrors. In other words, to see what's going on with the traffic behind us. And so that gives us a reference point and particularly if we look during the middle of the straightaway, and now we have the end of the straightaway, we have a data point to tell us, which cars have gotten further away, which ones have gotten closer, and so on. And entering a braking zone, and I suppose you could say entering a corner, but when we're entering a corner, we're usually busy. It's harder to look in the, so I'm not going to.
That's Dyke.
There.
Dyke was the one that chose the middle of the corner. He is dizzy.
That sounds right, Jay. So the point is, we want to see as much traffic behind us as is possible, and we want to be able to judge their closing speeds. Now, we also want to look exiting a corner, but now that's helping us with the cars that are close, and do I need to give a pass signal now or or shortly or whatever. So that is still an important answer. But the middle of the corner, we should be busy driving. There's no reason to look in the mirrors in the middle of the corner. And in DE, and it's different if you're racing, of course. And entering a corner, again, we should be busy, but hopefully we're let me see. Okay, so obviously the mirrors are a really important part of situational awareness and being aware of the cars behind. They really should. A driver should never be surprised by a car in the mirror. I'd be willing to bet that most of the people on this call who've been on track have been surprised by a car in the mirror. And yet, that shouldn't happen. And the reason is people are generally, or often, I shouldn't say not generally, often not looking in the mirrors at the right time. And the mirrors may not be adjusted properly, to an earlier comment. So we need to be scanning those mirrors, especially the rear view mirror on and at the end of the straightaway. As I said before, we're judging distance. Are cars closer? Are they further away? Exiting a corner confirms how close cars are. But we have way too many situations where people are surprised, or well, whether surprised one way or the other. And I don't care whether you're the overtaking car or the car being passed, that shouldn't happen. And if you're scanning the mirrors properly, most of the time you can give a signal so that the faster car can go by and neither of you interrupts your rhythm on the track. Okay, so that's what we've covered. Where to look, how we see, some exercises, reference points, mirrors, and when we should look. So just to summarize, look as far ahead as you can, look where you want to go. I've given you some exercises if you want to improve your vision and think about where you want to focus in the right place. Remembering that your focus area is very small, and we want to apply that properly. Adjust the mirrors. As I think I've only glanced at the chats, but I think I saw Tom Orvolino say most students don't have the mirrors adjusted properly. Absolutely. So help students, if you're an instructor, get the mirrors adjusted and look at them and help other drivers look in their mirrors at the right time. Look at the flags as early as you can, and remember that any kind of stress is going to impact how well you can actually see. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and I'm going to, if I can, get out of here. There we go. There we go. So
I'll make another comment, and this is more about how do you develop eyes up, which is one of the ways of developing good vision. And it's more just a comment, and you go to the track and you see cars with big banners on their windshields. The banners are not necessarily there to shade the driver. The idea of the banner is that it creates a line high up on the window that forces your eyes up. You sometimes will see racing drivers will have a peak on their helmet with a line out in front of it with a sticker. Same thing. It's about forcing the eyes up. So just think about that. There are techniques to force your eyes up if you're not used to it. Most of us who street drive are used to looking much closer to the front of the hood than we are further down. And that's one of the skills that's hard for many people to develop.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Okay. All right. Other questions, comments? Anybody going to go adjust mirrors? Yeah, good.
Hey, Bill, this year at the beginning, as soon as we can drive, I'm gonna have you come over and we'll set the mirrors.
Okay. All right. And then Matt will reset them for him, right? So, yes, I'd be happy to do that. It is absolutely amazing how much difference it makes. And even on the street, even if you never drove on the track, you know, to be on your favorite highway and to not have a blind spot to left or right. And by the and another benefit where you're doing your day-to-day driving is if you're merging onto an interstate, you know, you're always turning your head left to look to see what traffic is coming in the right lane, right? We all do that. Well, if the mirror is out further, you have more help, and you still have to turn your head, but the mirror is going to give you more visibility on the traffic in the right lane as you're coming down the ramp, assuming the ramp straightens out before you get dumped into the right lane. So that is, and I've had more than one person tell me that was pretty eye-opening in terms of just their streetcar, you know, when they made those adjustments.
Bill, are there any plans right now, given the obvious problems with social distancing, given when things do finally open up, as to whether or not we're actually looking at more advanced events for at least the first half of the year than would normally be the case? I've already seen RTR do that with 4 events that they're putting up that are advanced only. I don't know that there's been thought of that. Just want to get your ideas on that.
Well, I'll let Tom Calabro answer that since he's the track chair and he's the one that's getting paid the big bucks to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, Dan, I really, you know, our next event is Watkins Glen, which is at the end of July. Of course, it's still in what would be considered the hot zone, even though it's in upstate New York. There's going to be probably a lot of reluctance on people in this area to sit side by side. So, you know, we're really looking at, you know, do we want to make it a solo event right from the get-go? I'm leaning that way, but that has not been decided yet. I kind of want to see what other people are doing on the track. There have been some track events this past weekend. Out of all of them I've checked out, none of them had students.
Right.
So that's why I want to see which way it's going. It'll certainly be decided before the event opens.
Okay.
Tom, were any of those events on the East Coast?
No, they were not. There was, they were West Coast. But, and still, on the West Coast, they have less of an issue than we have, certainly in the California area. I think there was one in Colorado, and they've had some issues. But no, it could go either way. We have 6 events, I believe, left, and one of them, of course, is an advanced anyway. That's Watkins. That's the Watkins Glen. But all the others are scheduled to be instructed.
Now, is it possible that we could do a lead follow format for people who would normally be instructed without having an instructor physically in the car, but opening it up for their run groups?
Right now, we cannot, based on Porsche PCA rules.
Okay.
We cannot do that. And I was, again, reading some of these strings on the high performance driving instructor Facebook page, and they were explaining what you have to do to perform a lead follow, what the instructors have to go through to do a lead follow. And it's definitely not just jump in the car and say, hey, follow me. There's,
Oh, right.
there's radios involved. The instructor has to be trained. And the number of students that we could probably take on a lead follow is severely limited from what I've been reading. Bill, you may want to comment on that part, but from what I've seen, we would not be able to handle anywhere near the number of students we currently run.
Yeah, I'll just reinforce, Tom, what you're saying. The instructor training part is pretty daunting, to tell you the truth. I had a conversation with Cass Whitehead when he was here. Those of you that remember when he was here a couple of years ago for the instructor driving seminar, Cass is the head, he's the chief instructor at the Porsche Sport Driving School at Barber. And I asked him how they do instruction, and it's all lead follow. And so we had a conversation for a while about what they have to do. And not all of their instructors pass the grade, basically. It's a real challenge to get their instructors up to speed. That's one issue. The second issue is the one Tom mentioned, is just car numbers. A third issue is if you're Porsche Sport Driving School, everybody's in a similar car. In our case, people are in very diverse cars. And perhaps the biggest issue is that the lead follow is part of a program that has extensive classroom before and after virtually every session. So you do a classroom session where you talk about fill in the blank, braking technique, and then you go out and you focus on braking technique in the next session. Then you do another classroom where you talk about vision, and you go out and you work on that in the next session. So it's not just flip the switch. And so we have not crossed any bridges on that. And I think, personally, I think it's going to be a real challenge if we're going to try to move in that direction. And I think it's going to be really hard for PCA to find a way to make that work, broadly speaking. But a lot depends on how all of this whole COVID-19 situation evolves, and maybe necessity will be the mother of invention here, but there's a lot of issues. And
does anybody know if it's even feasible to wear a mask and a helmet?
Well, the one group that ran this past weekend, that was one of their rules, that everyone had to wear a mask or a balaclava. With a full coverage helmet, if you have the mask, if you have the visor down, that really serves the same purpose. When you wear a mask, you're not preventing yourself from getting anything. You're preventing some material from your mouth going into the air. But in any case, everyone had to wear a mask underneath the helmet. And it can be done. Again, balaclava.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we maybe we'll have to do that. Again, I don't think it's going to be an issue maybe towards the summertime, towards the end of the summertime, where we're worried so much about the virus. I think the problem is going to be, are people comfortable getting in another car? It may not be the virus that's the obstacle here. It may be the a person to how well do you feel? How comfortable do you feel getting into the car?
Right. Yep. Agreed. Okay. All right. Other questions, comments?
All I have to say is I'm appalled at Jay and Dyke not social distancing.
Well, I guess they could ride together then.
Yeah,
Anyone want to volunteer to sit in my passenger seat, please?
All right, well, before we wrap up, let me mention that anyone that's interested in the slides, just send me an email and I'll send them, or perhaps we'll put them up on the website actually. Hopefully you found at least one or two interesting tidbits you can apply in your driving. If you're like me, you're not even getting much day-to-day driving in, so it's hard to apply some of this stuff right now, given where we're at. Hopefully that changes in the not too distant future, but and hopefully there's some things that you can apply both day to day and on the track. And a final reminder that next Tuesday we have Shane Lewis. Thank you, Shannon. And the following Tuesday we have Ross Bentley. So that both of those should be really, really good speakers. I mean, most of you have heard both of them speak before and know that they're good speakers, but that's going to be a lot of fun. So,
Well, Shannon, I can't wait for week 3.
I knew someone was going to say that. Like, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but Noah Mazzola is on his sim. He's doing iRacing.
show off.
Show off.
The steering's a little jerky.
All right. All right. Well, everyone have a great evening. Stay safe.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll see you on
Thanks, Bill.
Zoom soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye, Kim.
Thanks, Bill. You bet.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.